Good afternoon, everybody. Om Shanti. Welcome to this celebration of International Women's Day. My name's Katie, and I'm here to lead you in a yo dance, a little taster of the health and well-being business that I've created. I deliver weekly classes in Nottingham, 8 weekly classes, and I deliver in schools for the NHS and for corporate clients. So, for this, if we can have the first track, please. If you'd like to find a space, you can do this standing or seated. It's best to stand up if you can. Find a space, don't be scared, don't be shy. I'm not going to make you do anything you don't want to. If you really don't want to, you can then sit back down, connect with the soles of your feet. So take your awareness to your feet. We're going to ground ourselves in the practice today with mountain posture Tadasana. And just rock from side to side. Feel that equal weight in the middle and then uneven weight. Maybe forwards and backwards. Just transfer that weight. And then connect and balance, equal and strong, and take your awareness down to the soles of your feet. And imagine here a golden energy rooting you into the earth, growing like roots, and the earth's golden energy spiraling. Bring that energy up your legs, squeeze your thigh muscles, squeeze your bottom, tuck your tailbone, grow tall out of the waist, and then imagine that energy spiraling all the way up to the center of the forehead. And pause here for a moment. Notice yourself, body, mind, spirit, and emotion. See a point of light and connect deep within. Connect then with your thumb and index finger in Chin Mudra. Take a nice big deep breath, however is right for you today. I'm just a guide. And as you breathe in, take a nice big tummy breath. So as you breathe in, your tummy expands. As you breathe out, your tummy pulls back in. Diaphragmatic breathing helps take us bigger deep breaths, stimulates our vagus nerve, which calms our body, which then calms our mind, uplifts our spirit, and balances our emotions. And then curl your 3 fingers into the palms of your hands, Chinmaya Mudra. Keep your tummy still and breathe into your rib cage. As you breathe in, ribs lift up and out. And as you breathe out, ribs lower. Breathing in, ribs lift up and out. Breathing out, ribs lower. Excellent. Then take your thumb and wrap it in your fingers. As you breathe in up above the collarbone, clavicular breathing. Breathing in to the very top of the lungs and between the shoulder blades. And then we're going to take our energy to the center, connect with Brahma Mudra, and we're going to do all 3 parts. Breathing in, tummy expands, ribs lift up and out, chest lifts. Breathing out, chest lowers, ribs low, and tummy pulls back in. Dirga Pranayama, the 3-part breath that balances the body, mind, spirit, and emotion. Notice your breath. Feel the breath in the throat and notice that breath, strong and powerful. And at the throat, it stimulates our carotid sinuses. And this sends signals to our heart to reduce the heart rate. So regular practice of this 3-part breath can help us manage blood pressure. Take another big deep breath in and exhale. And then bring your hands down to the center, and I'd like you to imagine a color of your choice, a color that makes you feel strong, balanced, equal. That color's unique to you, your own spirit. And feel that color like energy strong in the palms of your hands. And then as you breathe in, carry that energy up your spine. And as you breathe out, bring the energy back down. So you might keep the movement small, or you might take that wonderful, positive, colourful energy all the way up. Connect with the palms, look up at the thumbs, and slowly bring that energy down. This time I want you to imagine a red colour. Imagine that red energy, powerful and strong. Then an orange colour, creativity. A yellow colour, action and willpower. Blue colour, self-expression. Indigo colour. And light colour, white or violet. Then bring your hands to heart centre and imagine a green colour. Feel a sense of self-love, self-care, and self-kindness. And say to yourself, I am happy, I am positive, I am strong. And then gently relax the body. Ushers, if you would very kindly distribute the scarves to help us visualise the colour. We're actually going to use a little prop today. And it's imagining you're floating. It's a routine with poise. So the ushers are coming round with some scarves. You can take one or two. We'll have the scarves. And we're going to move with poise and strength. As you breathe in, you lift one arm. As you exhale, you lift the other arm. Breathe in, lift one arm and the other arm. And I'll add bits to the routine as we go through. We've got a sweep as well. So this is called a sweep. You're basically going to do a hair sweep round to one side and sweep around to the other side. You don't have to have a scarf if you don't want. We've also got some rolls one way, rolls the other way. If you can't take your hands over your head because you've got a jacket on particularly, I remember that from 2 years ago, you can always do the sweep around. So you take it across the shoulder, round, and then bring the other arm across. It's a bit like a cape or a pair of butterfly wings like we saw in the video. And I want you to connect your energy, but this time today, I'd like you to connect for this track because it's a track of love and connection. For somebody, a woman, here with us today or not present, maybe a sister, mother, an auntie, a niece, somebody close to you, and think about a positive intention connecting that energy. Track 2, please, Maestro. So we're going to send that energy out. Fabulous. Bring that energy back in. Lift one arm up, one down. Slow. Imagine you're floating. If you know the words, you can sing along both together. One little sweep. Pause here. One arm, you might lift the leg a little bit. And the other way. Both together. Both together. One arm, one leg maybe. And the other way. Slow, controlled movements. One arm, one leg. We lift one way. You don't have to lift if you don't want to. Both together. Both together. One arm, one leg. So it's nice and simple. Think that positive energy. Oh yes, I know the jackets are very constricting, aren't they? But you can do it in your mind. Sweep. Big and strong. Nice sweep round. Think you're sending that wonderful positive energy to somebody special, creating a sacred space for them and for you. Back to center we go up and switch. Both together. Feel like you're floating. Lovely. One arm, one leg. So remember to breathe. Inhale the prana, the life force from the breath. One arm, one leg. One arm, one leg, both together. Lovely. Sweep it round quickly. One arm, one leg. Lift. Oh, fantastic. Your energy is amazing. It looks wonderful. I wish you could see what I can see. I'm very lucky to be up here. One arm, one leg. I've been distracted, haven't I? It's a pleasure to be here. Excellent. Sweep it. Reach. Remember those big deep breaths. So we're going to imagine the energy coming into ourselves. So watch your back if you're going back like me. Then take it forwards. Other side. Lovely. Take it forwards. One arm, one leg. Big deep breaths. So you'll feel that energy warming you up now, your muscles. Getting nice and warm. Excellent. Both together, big deep breaths in and out. Fabulous. Little sweep. And the other way. One arm, one leg, find your pause and float. Send that energy to all those women's in our lives, past and present. Strength and femininity, power, fabulous. One either side. So you might be feeling a little bit warmer now. Big deep breaths, feeling strong and balanced. Excellent. Very good. You're all hired. Roll it forwards. Share that energy with the room. Bring that energy back to yourself. Go within. A big deep breath. So, your ushers, if you wouldn't mind collecting the scarves in, and then we have fans for the next routine. So this is about ourselves being strong, powerful, connecting with our unique self. So you might get a set of fans like this, or a set of fans like this. It helps with the energy, colour, power. Find your fans, and then I'll show you the moves. We've got, again, one arm, one leg. One arm, one leg. Cross the fans over. Cross the fans over. We've got a sweep across the front. We've got some stretches high. We've got some kicking forwards, and sweeping round. The chorus goes strong arms, bring it in. Ta-da! But also in this routine, we have a bit of free expression and creativity when you can bring in your own moves as well. So hopefully you can feel that wonderful positive energy. So now, oh yes, and if you want to have a flutter, they're perfect for a flutter. They're perfect if you've built up some nice heat. Or if... Oh yes, lovely fluttering down there. Perfect. Oh, beautiful. And they look good. So we're going to start. Next track, please. And if you haven't got your fans yet, when you get them, you can join in. Big, nice, big breath. Nice and slow and controlled. One arm, one leg. And the other way. If you know the words, you can sing along. Reach one arm, one leg. And the other way. Lunge. Sweep across the front. Beautiful. Reach to the sky. Circle them round. Amazing. That looks beautiful. Ready? One arm, one leg forwards. Big circle round. One arm, one leg. Big circle round. Strong arms. Bring it in. big reach, one arm, one leg. Circle it round. One arm, one leg. Maybe you don't have to do it big, you can do it small. Strong arms. Oh yes, this is you. And you and you. This is you. Connect with your inner self. Be strong, powerful. You. Excellent. Slow it down, one arm, one leg, but still strong. Feel grounded and equal. Lunge it here. And the other way. Excellent. One arm, one leg. We're warriors. You certainly are. Sweep across the front so you can keep it here. Or you can swoosh. Reach to the sky. Be glorious in all that you are. We're all unique and different. And again. Lovely. Strong arms here. Show me your strength. Be dramatic. Now I love this step. It's called the chicken. Someone named it the chicken. I was very serious about it when I did it. And we're going to turn it up. Your chance for a bit of freestyle. Oh yes. Anything, remember to breathe. Keep that freestyle going. Find your inner strength, your inner warrior. Lovely. All together now, strong arms. One arm, one leg forwards. Both arms around. Lovely. Very nice. Strong arms here. Feel that positive energy for yourself. Reach forwards. Big arm circle round. Reach forwards. Strong arms now. Can you reach the ceiling? You might even stretch. Whoop. And across the front. Strong arms here. Woo, very good. So just connect your fans at your heart centre. Feel that heart pounding, the energy built. And now we just need to bring that energy, come back within. Dancing can be very extensive and sending and expansive, spirit lifting. But so can yoga. We can bring that energy back inside, connect with ourselves, body, mind, spirit and emotion. Take a nice big deep breath in and exhale. Another big deep breath and just notice how you feel. You will feel happy, healthy and strong. And then connect. Namaste. May the light within me shine with the light within all of you. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. You feel warmed up, ready for it. It's an amazing lineup. So if you'd like to hand your fans back to the ushers, it's been a pleasure to yo dance with you today. Can't wait to hear the wonderful, inspiring women that are going to be talking today. Thank you very much.
So, Om Shanti, everybody. Good afternoon, and a really, really warm welcome to our celebration of International Women's Day, which actually falls on the correct day this year, the 8th of March every year, but today we're celebrating it on the actual day, which feels really special. It's great to have all of you here. Particularly wonderful to have such a lovely representation from RAF Wittering with us. Special welcome to all of you. Really, a round of applause. And we're going to be hearing from Group Commander Jo a little later on in the programme. She has, Jo Lincoln, she has recently been made Station Commander, which is a wonderful achievement. So it's great. It's really great to be celebrating women's achievements here. We also have a couple of apologies for their absence. Deacon Jan Sutton, who usually loves to be part of International Women's Day, fell this week and has hurt her back. So it's a shame she's not with us, but we extend her good wishes and hope she is feeling better soon. And also two of our sisters from the Glasgow Centre, Rose and Marilyn, were going to be with us this afternoon doing some workshopping around the idea of creating sacred space. They've recently come back from India and are not feeling well, so we send them our good wishes too. And we will be discussing the idea of creating sacred space a little bit later in the afternoon. So they're included in our circle through our thoughts. So before we get completely stuck in, let's just pause for a moment and reflect on the significance of International Women's Day. Today in 2020, women are making great strides and moving forwards, and it does feel year on year as if the presence and the profile of women internationally is slowly changing. I don't know whether that's just because I'm looking for it, that I'm seeing it, or whether it is actually happening, but it does feel as if there really is, each year, some energy is building on the year before. And this is something that has been happening right since 1906. It didn't start out as a United Nations initiative. It actually has its origins in the Soviet Union, where they celebrated the achievement of women, and it was them who chose the day of March the 8th. And then apparently China as well started to mark the day, and they gave women in China a half day off for International Women's Day, which I think is an idea that's got legs. See if we can get that seed planted out there somewhere. United Nations adopted the idea in 1977, and so since then there has been this tradition of just stopping and reflecting on the contribution. It's not really of women, I tend to think of it as the feminine principle. Because we're all of us made up of masculine and feminine energies, and it's delightful to have so many men with us this afternoon. So you're not excluded from this, it's embracing the feminine principle. And maybe just for a moment, if you would like to think of a woman who inspires you, or a woman whose story touches your heart. It could be someone you've read about, it could be someone who you've seen in the news, it could be a woman from history who isn't even alive anymore, but just a woman, could be your grandmother, could be anybody. But let's just for a moment, in our mind, picture a woman who we would like to send our energy to today, just in this moment. It could be our love, it could be our strength, it could be our support, it could be a woman who you've read about who's been imprisoned without a proper trial, it could be a woman who was forced to flee from her country, whatever the circumstances. Let's just connect with all the women around the world who on this day are stopping and reflecting on the contribution that women make to our society. So let's just take 20 seconds, picture that woman in our mind, and just send our appreciation and our love. And feel that sense of the sisterhood that we are each of us connected to. In our families, in our communities, and right around the world. One thing that women are very good at is storytelling. And it's through stories that we share ideas, we share inspiration. we share encouragement, we share support. And so this afternoon is very much a sharing of our own individual stories. But before we start that, it would be lovely just to hear a few words from the European director of the Brahma Kumaris, Sister Genti, who's a regular visitor to the house here, so many of you will have met her. But she wasn't able to be here today, and she wanted to be included in our circle, and so she has recorded a special message for her, which we're going to play now. Sister Genti.
Om Shanti, a greeting of peace to my sisters and my brothers. I hope some brothers have also come today. We are celebrating International Women's Day, and perhaps you're wondering, is there an International Men's Day? Well, I think 364 days of the year are still men's days, and one day is given to honoring women specially. Is there a need for this? I think so. Still, there seem to be many, many different levels of inequality. And so by bringing one day of the year our focus on the fact that it's very important that half the world's population should have equal rights is a very important fact. And in particular today, I'd like us to look at the whole subject of creating sacred spaces. It's been said that a woman changes a house into a home. This is absolutely true. And it's not just in terms of the furnishings or the color or the decor or even the flowers, but more it's the atmosphere, the vibrations, so that whoever walks into this place will feel a sense of belonging, a sense of welcome, and a sense of tranquility and peace. And so that happens for every home. A woman has the ability to create that atmosphere. But in particular, thinking about sacred places, think about all the pilgrimage places that you have ever been to or that you know of. Not only is there tranquility, but there's also a sense of something up above, something beyond the mundane world. At the present time, the mundane world goes through many different tragic experiences of sorrow. Sometimes there's happiness, for sure. But if we look at generally what happens today, it's a huge amount of bad news. And I don't think it's just hype, but I think it's the reality. There is a lot of sorrow, a lot of suffering in the world. And so a sacred space means a space which is different, a space which is up above, a space that's able to help you, uplift you, heal you, and also bring you closer to the divine. Coming closer to the self means I'm able to understand what's going on within. A sacred space is created with vibrations, and so in that space where there are pure, healthy, powerful vibrations that can heal, then it's possible to find yourself, and it's possible to go further up and experience the love of the divine. So my hope is that everyone who is here today will experience the sacred space that the center offers, but also carry away this inspiration to create a sacred space wherever it is you are, because you, the soul, are the child of the divine, and so you are sacred, and so your vibrations can make any place sacred also. And women in particular have this particular gift to be able to create that space filled with pure, loving vibrations that can nurture and sustain and heal. Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you very much to Sister Genti for those inspiring words. And thank you as well, before that, to Katie for her yo dance. We didn't give Katie a round of applause. I think she deserves a round of applause as well. It's been lovely watching Katie's career develop now. She has a flourishing business doing this inspirational yo dance. I don't know whether synchronized headscarf twirling is going to maybe one day become an Olympic event, who knows? But it certainly looked pretty good from where I was standing. It was strange to think that my grandmother never left the house without wearing one of those around her head as a little headscarf. She tied it in a little knot under her chin. These days we twirl them around. Much more fun, I think. So I'd like to invite to the stage as well, if you'd like to be making your way up, our panellists for this afternoon, who are going to be getting their teeth stuck into some of the issues that have been raised for us today by International Women's Day to consider. So if you could come up onto the stage now, Sister Maureen, Baroness Verma, and Claudia Webb MP, and I'll introduce you formally when you get up here, but do please come and make your way up onto the stage now. Thank you. So Maureen, I think you're in the middle. Thank you, Claudia. So the theme for this year's International Women's Day, each for equal, which when I first saw that, I thought, what does that mean, each for equal? It sort of sounded a little confusing. But it's each for equal, creating a gender equal world. They're calling this generation equality, that the young millennials are making so many changes, and equality is one of the things that they are really striving for. The theme of realising women's rights. And they've actually got a little arm gesture. I don't know if you've seen it. Has anyone else seen this arm gesture? Joe knows it. Yeah. It's this.
Yes.
Is everyone able to just do this little gesture? It's the right arm above the left arm. And it's quite a powerful pose, actually, when you do it. And of course, it's the equal sign, which is one line above another, isn't it? It's the equal sign. But it also feels quite protective. It's like it's shielding your heart and your solar plexus. So it's about equality, but it's also about meaning business. It feels strong, it feels protective. And I suppose to be balanced, we should do it the other way around as well, because we don't want one arm feeling less equal than the other arm. And as I was doing this, when I was reading about it last night, I thought actually it's quite an interesting comparison that, you know, male and female are really like the two arms. And they both are of the same length. The hands, they're different from each other. The thumbs are in different places, the fingers are in different places. But actually, when they come together, look what they can create. Look what two hands can create, more than just one hand on its own. And if one arm was shorter than the other, it would be unbalanced. There may be things that you couldn't do as easily or as effectively. And for me, it really felt like the male-female coming together. And when they come together in unison, the whole body, the whole, benefits. if you're just doing something with one arm, you're not as effective, you're not as strong, you're not as capable, but bring the two together and the whole is benefited. So I thought that was rather nice. So thank you all for taking that pose. I think we've got a photo of that as well, so we can share that around. So there are some interesting issues to discuss today, but let me first of all introduce you to our panellists. No stranger to Harmony House here. It's lovely to have Baroness Sandeep Verma back with us today. Recently just returned from Uganda. Was it yesterday you got back?
Yesterday morning.
Yesterday morning, so you're hot off the press, as it were. Of course, Baroness Verma went to the House of Lords in 2006, held several key ministerial appointments in the Department of Energy and Climate Change and the Department of International Development. And in more recent years, she's worked in non-parliamentary roles as chairwoman or chair of a number of different companies, so working in the corporate field, often in the energy sector, and playing a key role in encouraging women to address the gender imbalance in the industries in which she's worked. So very warm welcome to you, Sandeep. Maureen Goodman, of course, a regular visitor to the House. Maureen is a programme director of activities at the Brahma Kumaris European headquarters in London, Global Cooperation House. And for over 40 years, she's been a senior teacher of Raj Yoga meditation, which we heard mentioned in the video earlier. And in that time, the last 40 years, Maureen's put her not small amount of energy, she has a huge amount of energy, and she's put it behind countless local and global initiatives, each one of them working to raise consciousness and bring about a more unified and coherent world. So Maureen, lovely to have you with us as well.
Thank you.
And it's a really, really special warm welcome to Claudia, who's with us today. Claudia Webb MP. She is, in fact, your local MP. How about that? Can we have a round of applause for Claudia? It's really lovely to have you with us, Claudia. Of course, you won your seat for Labour in Leicester East, where we are now, in the 2019 general election. You were born and bred in Leicester, so you're a local girl, and you even went to university here as well, before going to London University to do your master's degree, after which you worked as policy director and advisor to the then Mayor of London, Ken Livingstone. You were also elected to the Islington London Borough Council, so you've had experience at that level, and then you were also elected to be on the Labour Party's National Executive Committee, and now here you are as a Member of Parliament as well, and a woman to boot as well, so it's a double congratulations. So a round of applause for our panel this afternoon. It is interesting, I was reading about a book that's come out this week about the women of Westminster. I haven't had a chance to talk to you about this, but there's a statistic that in the past 100 years, 491 women have been elected to Parliament. But it wasn't until 2016 that the total number of women ever elected surpassed the number of male MPs in a single Parliament. That's quite recent, 2016. I wonder, Claudia, whether you feel, as you have so recently come into the House of Commons, whether you are still in a place of breaking new ground and establishing new ways of doing things as a woman MP. How have you found that?
I mean, I think the picture presents itself. Yes, we have a increased number of women, but still nowhere near the percentage that reflects the population. So I think we now have, in the totality, certainly of the House of Commons, I don't know about the House of Lords, but certainly of the House of Commons, we have the totality of 1/3 of all parliamentarians being women. And of course, in my own party, we've now exceeded the 50% mark, but in the totality, it's 1/3. And that isn't nowhere near enough to reflect society as a whole. So we still have a long way to go, but we've come from a long way where, I go around Parliament and there are so many pictures of the House of Commons being totally male. And that is almost shocking to see it in person, to know that it's taken so long for there to have been even the first woman MP, Member of Parliament, let alone to where we are now. So it's a huge transformation in that respect, but we still have a long way to go. And of course, for us in the Labour Party, in order to get to that 50%, we had to implement policies like all women shortlist, just to enable the balancing up of what was necessary to bring about that kind of equality. So it's really a tremendous change. And of course, in 1987, we had our first black woman MP, Diane Abbott. And of course, that in itself was again a transformation. And now we have, in 1919, elected to this parliament, we have the greatest number of African, Caribbean and Asian and minority ethnic women elected to parliament ever.
Which is a step massively in the right direction. Do you remember the time when you felt that stirring, that you wanted to go into politics and you wanted your life to make a difference? Was there a moment for you?
Oh, well, I mean, there were many moments, and the moments are here in Leicester, of course, because of this. Leicester is where I was born and where I grew up and where I had all of my early experiences that highlighted the levels of inequality that I felt just even as a child growing up. And those inequalities related both to gender and to race. And these were important because, of course, Leicester is known for its huge diversity now, and we celebrate that diversity and that unity and that solidarity. But it wasn't always like that. And it was pretty tough growing up as a child of African, of Caribbean, of Asian background, because, of course, I grew up in those days when in local elections, 18% of the vote went to the National Front. Those that perpetrated hate, if you like. And it wasn't just felt in the ballot box, it was felt on the streets. As Asians and Africans together, we felt that on the streets. And that's what I felt as a woman. And I felt, hang on a minute, when I'm getting beaten on the streets, ain't I a woman? And I thought, this had a profound impact on me. And of course, when I saw that in 1987 that a black woman could be elected to the Houses of Parliament, I thought that's what I wanted to do, even back then.
Amazing. Maureen, you and I have known each other for many, many years now, and I know you generally to be someone who keeps very calm and even-mannered, but the times when I have seen you become very animated is actually around this area of politics. I think given a different set of events, you yourself probably could have easily gone into politics.
Who knows?
And yet here you are now trying to be a change maker through doing the work that you do, harnessing people's innate spirituality. Do you see there being a huge difference in those approaches, or actually are they the same thing, just dressed in a different way?
It's a very interesting question. I think that relates to the question, how do you really bring about change and long-term change and profound change? And I think it needs a balance of both of them. There is still quite a bit of the activist in me at times. And
you say that with a little glint in your eye.
Because, just share my experience. Wherever I see inequality, and it doesn't have to only be in terms of gender, but in terms of ethnicity or whatever, or if I see that a group of people are being marginalised in some way, it upsets me, I have to say. And what I found over the years is that the more I would get upset about something like that, I'm actually, in a sense, contributing to an atmosphere where there really is a problem, and it's as if I'm contributing to the polarity of that situation. It took me a long time to learn that, because I always felt I have to fight for something. I have to say something. Sometimes I'd be unpopular, whether it's in my own organisation or other settings. But it's really been the last couple of years I've come to see that there can be another way. There is another way to do things. And if you set up an atmosphere where you are really valuing everybody equally, it's whether it's the people who are marginalising people or the people who are being marginalised, somehow both are lacking, they're actually saying, I'm needing something. And, conflict is because we don't feel fulfilled within ourselves, and often perpetrators of things that we know are wrong also are very unfulfilled, and then they make other people feel very unfulfilled to try and fulfill their needs. And it's a vicious circle. And so lately I've been focusing much more on, how to really create an atmosphere that will make everybody feel valued and safe and trusted and so on. But it's interesting that we were having a meeting just earlier on, and it's a particular issue that we probably have to have a bit of a fight over in terms of our retreat centre. I may go into the details later, but let me tell you. The plan to have a gravel extraction, get my words out, gravel extraction, a huge site just about 400 metres away from our land. And we're realising that it's not just enough, certainly, to sit and give good vibes to the situation. We have a lot of work to do.
And it's not just any old land, it's a retreat centre where people are coming for the peace and quiet.
Yeah, it's a retreat centre where people really feel a sense of change in their lives. It's something that gives people comfort, that gives people a feeling of being nurtured from the inside, gives them that feeling of being safe. We're talking about safe spaces, sacred spaces, and not too many of those spaces exist in the world, actually. And so we want to preserve that, but it's also a wider environmental issue. There's so many aspects to it. So I'm telling myself, I have to approach this in a way that I don't cause myself distress. It's an interesting one, I'll just say that.
But by definition, you are being drawn into a political process because
Yes.
you have to resist what's being proposed. And so it's really looking at change through politics and political power and change through spiritual power.
Yes.
And Baroness Vermeer, if I can bring you into the conversation here, this is an area that you have been working in for decades now and at the forefront of national politics. And I wonder, where do you find that balance within yourself? You've been involved in so many political campaigns, but very often you have brought through your own sort of human values, your own spiritual values, your own integrity as a woman, and that has informed the work that you have done. Do you permanently navigate this boundary between those two aspects of yourself?
Yeah, I think it's right. The environment shapes you.
Yeah.
And I suspect that growing up, and I grew up a little before Claudia, but faced the same challenges, is that whatever you see as a child, as your surroundings, that will shape how you grow up to view the world. However, it's what I agree with what Maureen said as well. Sometimes you have to find that balance between getting angry and being able to put a much more practical, constructive approach to something. And so I've spent a lifetime fighting injustices, and we still fight them because, even today, there are too many women, too many girls that don't have access to services, finance, to all the things that should be a valued human right to each and every one of us. And that's not just in faraway countries, it's in this country too. I mean, even here, sitting in Leicester, there are thousands of women who, because of language difficulties, can't access rights. Where's the politics to help them be able to be a human being in their own right? And and I do get angry, Maureen, and politicians should get angry, because if we don't get angry, those things will continue. And that means every single day's living becomes a chore an unhappy place to be, and I don't think that's right. I think my driver has always been that I won't let myself down on giving up on my principles. My principles have always meant everything of what I've based myself on. So I don't belittle somebody else to rise myself. But if I see something that is wrong, I call it out. Now that sometimes is an uncomfortable truth. But if I don't call it out, then who will? And I've seen that as my sort of part in politics. You know, I've been happy to stand up against my own party when I've needed to. But I've also stood up against people that I feel aren't doing the right thing. And that's difficult to do. And I think more of us, and it was the wonderful coming together with the exercises that came before us, is that actually when you put yourself out there, you will do things that you don't expect to do. And I suspect a lot of you didn't expect to be doing this with your fans this morning, but you do it. And I think sometimes we need to have a real good reflection of ourselves, of what it is we want. I became a grandmother 2 weeks ago to a beautiful, beautiful little girl. And Ashok and I, who have been champions for women's rights and girls' rights for a very, very long time, don't want the same world for her. We don't want the world where they're battling still. And I think it's happy birthday to you too, Claudia.
Happy birthday, Claudia.
Yes. Yep.
Claudia's birthday today.
Celebrations all round.
So we're all singing happy birthday when we wash our hands at the moment. So
Twice. You have to sing it
sing
twice.
it twice. So next time you do that, you can direct it to Claudia.
Sure.
But it's interesting.
And the new arrival.
And the new arrival. Congratulations. And what's her name?
Her name's Adia, which is God's treasure.
Oh, that's beautiful. But it's interesting that you apologise to Maureen for getting angry, because in a way anger can sometimes be a gateway to opening up our passion. It can be a gateway to finding out the extent to which we actually care about something. And I notice this as a trend in society now, that people are no longer just the job that they do, but they are also the campaign that they're supporting. So you'll very often see someone being referred to as an actor and activist. And just in this weekend's newspapers, there was an article about one of the original supermodels from the 90s, Amber Valletta. They're saying she's gone from amber to green. She was recently arrested for being on a green protest march. And as she was arrested, she was carried away shouting, "The waters are rising, and so are we." You know, this idea of getting her voice out there. She said in this article that, "I believe in living a life that has meaning. I don't want to sit around eating bonbons." And it's this notion that each of us now, whatever we're doing, sorry, I've got my back to some people there, whatever we're doing in our life to earn money is one thing, but we are now, all of us, being called to add our voice to whatever it is that possibly our anger has awoken us to, or our passion has awoken us to, whether it's climate change, whether it's plastics, whether it's the way animals are treated, whether it's veganism, whatever it is. We are, all of us, becoming active politically or active in a campaigning way. And this is very interesting because traditionally it's been politicians who have done this. But now we're all doing it, and we all have to do it. Claudia?
Well, I actually think that women have been active for a very long time. They've been activists for a very long time. I think the grassroots movement of activism, you know, politics is all around us. It isn't just politics with a big P. And I certainly grew up in Leicester knowing that politics was with the small p, the community politics mattered. We had a lot of work to do to overcome the inequalities that we were experiencing. And I therefore pay tribute to all of the women that went before, that shaped our communities. And it's really real because, for example, we had here in Leicester the Asian women that went out on the imperial typewriter strike, and they changed race and employment legislation and progress in this country. You know, they actually set the tone for how race and employment was manifested, and union involvement manifested from Leicester to London and elsewhere. And so those types of histories you get to learn about later, but actually they're not in the history books, and they ought to be. It's a missing history, and it's an important history. And today, 50 years on from the Equal Pay Act. It's 2020, we're 50 years on from the Equal Pay Act. And those women that went out on that Imperial Typewriter strike, they were striking because of unequal pay. And in a sense, 50 years on, you say, well, what has happened? Where is this equal pay for women? We're still getting paid less than men, and it's a disgrace. And in a sense, what I see here, and I think if anything, the legacy of those women and the legacy of their activism and their courage to stand out, even when they didn't get the full support of the unions, they stood out, they came to the battle line and they fought. And that legacy ought to be today that we continue to fight in their memory and in their name. So when I see today the factories that are now here, that have been, in a sense, deindustrialized, sadly, from those days when they were unionized, that when we see today that women are being paid no more than £3 an hour, then we have to challenge that and call it out. And yes, be angry about it, because no woman should have to face that level of inequality, especially when we brought, the Labour brought in the minimum wage since 1999. So, this ought to bring about the change, and we all ought to continue to fight together to ensure that women in particular, particularly those who are most vulnerable, are not having to operate on poverty wages, because that affects everybody's lives, the neighbourhood, the family, the community. It's really important that we challenge that.
Baroness Farmer.
Yeah, just to come to these points, I mean, even today, the sadness is, this great city of ours, there is an 11% nearly pay gap between black and white in the public sector. That is a reflection of this city. Those women who were in the typewriter factory did fight. My grandfather was one of the founders of the Indian Workers' Union in the 50s. But we ourselves have become slightly quiet. And that is our problem. Because today in this city, the sadness is the representation we had has actually diminished. In the public sector, we have less representation today in the city than we did before. Now that is because we've forgotten the activism. We've forgotten the fact that as communities we should come together, because we're too busy in our own separate communities. And activism was always a force for good when we put our differences on one side and came together. And that is the city I grew up in, and I feel sad. I genuinely feel sad because, and this is why I mentioned it in the beginning when I opened up, in my city, where women who have no access to services is not because they don't want them, is because they don't know how to get them. And that is really, really critical for women, because language matters. English speaking matters. To be understood matters. And gender inequality, I mean, Sherry Blair was very bravely saying this morning, we are actually worse off this year than we were last year. It's going to take us 255 years to actually reach the same pay scales as men at the rate we're going at.
255 years.
We're not going to let that happen, are we?
But it's not just equal pay.
It's not equal pay.
That's not. That's of course a massively important issue. But the issues are so much broader. I'd just like to read to you a little bit from the International Women's Day website. These are the thoughts that they're introducing as part of the theme for today. An equal world is an enabled world. In other words, if you can lift up those who need lifting up, it's not just them that you're benefiting, everyone benefits. Individually, we're all responsible for our own thoughts and actions all day long, every day. We can actively choose to challenge stereotypes, fight bias, broaden perceptions, improve situations, and celebrate women's achievements. Maureen, what would you say to this
Well,
idea of uplifting all of humanity together?
Oh, absolutely. And this was something I wanted to bring in. The other side of this is really empowering women to feel that confidence to have a voice and to speak up and to make choices. And I know I speak to many people, men, women, all ages, all different backgrounds. And I just see how suppressed people feel, and especially how suppressed women feel. And when you can awaken something in them so that they realize that actually what is doing the suppression, their response to that external situation, is that actually has the effect of self-suppression. It's very interesting.
It's self-censorship.
Yeah. Now, that's not to say that the suppression isn't there in a very real sense from certain sectors of society, and in fact, it's very much all around us because, we live, like you said, people are in their silos, they're just looking after whatever their own interests are. There are so many vested interests in society that people will suppress anybody for their own means. For their own ends, I should say. But once people begin to realize that actually, if I shift something in my own thinking and I begin to respond differently, then the situation around me changes. And a lot of people don't make that connection between what's happening inside and our thoughts, as was being mentioned there, and actually what's happening on the external. And the more you see, one thing is to say, yes, I think this is right. And then you know how often you want to fight for something and internally your mind is saying, well, it's not really going to happen. You have can have a kind of weak commentary inside. I'd like to do this, but it's not really my right, is it? Or what will so-and-so say? Or how will... there's somebody in the audience who I had a conversation like this with just recently, who has a great opportunity, but what about my family? What about, at some point, we as women, all human beings, have to stand up and say, let me take my life into my hands. I've made choices in my life to follow the spiritual life, very different to what any of my family would have wanted. And, when you're first taking those choices, of course it's a little bit difficult, but you have to answer your inner calling. If you don't do that, you'll forever feel that little bit of regret inside. And so I think this is really a key thing, shifting our thoughts so that we begin to value ourselves very much. And once we value and respect ourselves, our whole way of thinking changes and our whole interaction with other people change. And this is a key to change, I feel. And then the activism will be very powerful.
But, when we get involved, sometimes it can be about the side product can be creating more division. And yet actually a lot of what we're seeing happening in the world today is making us realise our interconnection and our interdependence on each other, wherever we come from and whoever we are, whether we look at coronavirus. No one has immunity from coronavirus. Climate change. No one has immunity from climate change. The plastics that are now everywhere and ruining our natural environments, we're all equally affected by that. And so in our spiritual journey, we reach a point where we see the greater picture, the greater whole. And this is another concept that is being put forward by the International Women's Day today, and they're calling it collective individualism, which is an interesting idea. And they're saying we are all parts of a whole. This is literally taken from the website. Our individual actions, conversations, behaviours and mindsets can have an impact on our larger society. Collectively, we can make change happen. Collectively, we can help to create a gender equal world in this instance. But is this something, Claudia, in your work that you're able to embrace, that yes, there's the party political, but there's also the bigger picture of which humanity is all a part equally?
Well, I think what you've said is, in terms of collective individualism, reminds us actually solidarity and unity and working together is important. We don't operate as the self and the individual. There might be an ideology that has been self-centered, and capitalism has brought that on to some extent, where people operate in a very singular individual operation. But actually to tackle the inequalities and to deal with the what is often structural oppressions, we need the unity and solidarity of others. We need the organizations that used to exist, that existed when I grew up. We have a favorite saying, African saying, called talawa. We may be little, but we large. It takes a village to raise a child. We are not singular. When I was growing up in Leicester, you walk down the road, nobody ignores you. You're a child, nobody ignores you, everybody says hello. You are recognized, you belong somewhere, you have an identity, you belong. You know that if you were doing wrong, your parents were going to know about it because this was the family. Everybody together. You wasn't invisible. And that is somehow changed now. So we had, back then, you know, the National Youth Agency existed here in Leicester. We had numerous community voluntary youth organisations that supported each other. Here in this constituency, we had the Belgrave Benno Women's Centre, and we had many organisations that brought people together and gave the empowerment that was necessary for people to feel empowered. English wasn't something which was missing, it was an additional language. Your language that you had was important. That was the power. You were enabled to feel that your language, your first language, was the powerful language because actually you had something additional that others didn't have. That was the kind of empowerment that people had. And what we've had is a rolling back of, if you like, the resources, the support, and the investment that was needed. And you can't operate by yourself and alone. To some extent, you can find peace and an inner self. And to get my inner self, for example, you know, walk in the park, peace, comfort. In Parliament, I've even found some women-only spaces. So those are good places to sometimes find yourself in a place where there are many competing voices.
It'd be nice to come and talk about that more in a moment, but Baroness Verma, what would you say, because you've worked internationally for many years now, in terms of, you know, this, seeing the bigger picture that we are now realising we are all inextricably a part of?
Exactly, and I think if we just sometimes stand still for a moment and realise that whatever happens here has an impact somewhere else, but whatever's happening over there is having an impact here. And climate change is one of those things. Actually, we're poorer now, not monetary-wise, but in our compassion. We're poorer now in our time. We actually run out of time every single day because we're too busy trying to accumulate things that often have little value after a few days even. And we've stopped understanding that time given to children, given to parents, given to family doesn't come back. So unless we can actually stop ourselves sometimes to think, what is more important to us? And that same importance is to every family across the globe. Now, I have been an activist all my life because I've had to be an activist all my life, whether it's protecting and standing up for women who have been sexually, violently, domestically abused, to children who have witnessed their mothers being beaten up, to just the abuse that we're all beginning to think is all right in common day life now. We have to take some responsibilities for that, and I accept that. Individually, we can do lots of things, but we can't do everything unless we come together. And whether we're saving the planet or making the planet a better place for tomorrow, we have to come together. But we also have to recognize there are huge barriers in place. And those barriers are generated by us. Because we fail to see that somebody else may have a different opinion and that we need to respect it. We've lost respect. We've lost the ability to be kind, and we've lost the ability to listen. And until we regroup all of those things again, to be quite frank, we have got a lot of things that we need to be answering for that we're not. And generations will ask us. I actually flicked through and saw some great names of female leads in the past. Rosa Parks, you know, the daughter of Maharaja Dalip Singh, Sophia Dalip Singh, who was a well-known suffragette, but nobody talks about her. So there are great females that we need to find and reignite so that we can actually demonstrate to not just women and girls, but to men and boys, that unless we come together, this place, this world that we're trying to create, and we're a hamster on a treadmill, is actually wearing away. And nature teaches us some strong lessons.
One of the ways you could condense this down really is that for many people the world is no longer feeling a safe place. We're feeling threatened, and that is for some people the pinch point that brings them into action. Maureen, you travel internationally as well. How would you summarise this notion of personal individual safety and feeling secure in one's own being?
Yeah, I do. When I travel around, meet different people, I see that there's like a sort of hunger for this kind of thing. People do feel very vulnerable, and they feel that there are forces around them that they can't fight, you know. And in a way, in that instance, your own personal safety is even more important, understanding yourself. I do feel that we are not reflective enough in our society. Like you said, we're very orientated towards action. We don't take time to consider the impact of the decisions that we make, the consequences, and we react. And often we end up fighting crises, firefighting, rather than taking a step back to see what are the things that can be put in place that would actually prevent the situations. I mean, resources for young people is a classic thing. It costs a lot more to keep a young offender in prison than to have a youth club for 100 young people, you know. But then I need to give some time to myself, and I mustn't feel guilty in doing that. And very often as women particularly, especially mothers, I would say, you know, I'm on call 24/7, you know, and if I take time for myself, what about X, Y, Z? But it's a kind of false economy in a way. If I take that little bit of time for myself so that I become strong and I can nurture myself from the inside, I begin to feel that, well, I have something to offer to the world. It's not just that I have to then absorb what the world is bringing to me. I actually have something inside that's valuable that I can bring to the world. And usually life's a battle, but you know, when we talk about protection, I say, okay, if you want to protect, often people ask me, how do I protect myself from people's bad vibrations? It's a question I often get. I say, well, you know, if you think about you're protecting yourself, then there's that little bit of fear there. And fear is what is really destroying so much in our society at the moment. But if I actually strengthen myself inside, and I'm able to have that love, inner peace, inner strength, compassion, all these really strong qualities, they actually will emanate out from me, and that is the protection. So I don't need to have fear. I actually need to strengthen myself. And that will create an atmosphere around me. Like we have our elder sisters, and I know you've met, many people here have met, and you will meet, I'm sure. And the current head of our organisation is 104 years of age, and Daddy Janki, amazing. But you go into her presence, you feel safe in her presence, but you also know that nobody could take advantage of her. She is totally safe within herself because of her inner strength. And I think this is where we need to go, because we can spend our whole lives battling, and we probably all will, but this is where we need to go to.
So So
that
safety,
strength.
a sort of a sense of safety being almost a state of consciousness as much as a reality.
Yes.
And I know, Claudia, this is an area that you mentioned, that the House of Commons has women-only rooms and that's nice for you to go to. But, you know, when you become an MP, you are very much putting yourself in the firing line. You're putting your head up above the parapet for people to come and take a shot at. How have you learned to create a sense of safety and well-being whilst in that maelstrom of you know, everything flying everywhere?
I mean, I think that there is that sort of self-preservation to be able to find some spaces where one can just be oneself without being on show. This is obviously a 7-day-a-week reality now, so you're on call in that sense. And that's why I haven't yet found all of the spaces in Parliament, but there are a number of women's parlours and women's places, and I found some of them, and these are totally exclusive to women. And there are some interesting things in these places. You can lie down, you can take a shower, you can read a book, you can put your feet up, and so on. So that is unusual but interesting, because it's recognising that women, you know, can take that time and space. But equally, I think outside of Parliament, because I always call Parliament now, and maybe I will be much kinder to it as time goes on, but I call it an open prison, a luxury open prison, because you always have to be within 8 minutes of the bell. You must be on the estate. You can go wherever you want, but you must be within 8 minutes of the bell. Everybody, obviously, you know, are very kind and very nice in terms of the clerks, and everybody knows who you are, and nobody's mixed me up yet, so that's one thing. But outside of Parliament, of course, and you will appreciate that in Parliament it feels very secure, because you actually visibly see men, and it is men usually, with firearms, you know, real weapons that are there to protect you. So that feels safe inside, and obviously when you leave Parliament, there is a heightened awareness about what happened to Jo Cox, and that is real. And so there is a deep concern about safety in members of Parliament that are in the public eye, and women in particular. And you feel that sense of fear, but at the same time you cannot let it inhibit you in going about your daily life. Now, what happened to Jo was terribly, terribly sad, and the fact that she was at her constituency office when it happened is, of course, a worry. But that won't, in a sense, stop me from also finding space, as I've tended to do, in parks and open spaces in nature, because I think that having some kind of calm is important. But I think it's always a contradiction, however, because it's a bit of a luxury that I can have that level of self-awareness and understanding, because it's a bit of a luxury when compared to the, if you like, the casework of women that I then am looking at. Because of course, I mean, both men and women approach me for help, but when I look at women's casework and I look at the circumstances that affect their lives, that they don't have those same sets of luxuries, that their lives are defined by the misogyny that they face, the sexual violence that they face, the precarious work patterns that they face, the fact that they are struggling really between eating and heating, the fact that people are sofa surfing, that is, you know, they may not be rough sleeping, but they are sofa surfing.
If we can just
and all of those,
to this idea of creating safety, because I know, Baroness Verma, there's a project that you're involved in at the moment which is looking to create safe spaces for women in the community at large?
So I'm chair of UN Women UK, and part of that is actually creating a strategic vision for how women in the UK can actually be supported in feeling safe. But I just want to take us one step away. Even today, we're better protected here than women across some of the most dangerous terrains in the world. And those safe spaces really need to always be at the back of our minds. Because just think, you want to be a political activist in a country where torture, murder are commonplace, where you speak up, you speak out, you're arrested, you're tortured, you're hanged. Those are the places we really should be worried about. Because whilst we can have political discourse here, nobody's going to come and arrest us, take us away, torture us, hang us, and do all sorts of things. Sexually exploit us. You know, how many countries on the planet still have rape as a weapon? I mean, you know, we have got millions and millions of women and girls across the world. And today is the day we need to remind ourselves of those. Because those safe spaces don't exist for those women and girls. Those safe spaces are redundant because women and girls have got no access to sanitary products. So they can't go to school. So for me, safe spaces is really about the world in its round thinking about their organisations and how do they operate to make women and girls, wherever they are, feel safe. So the work we're doing with UN Women UK hopefully will feed into the international committees across the world, and that is about organisations taking some responsibility. Making sure that whether it's the Air Force, whether it's football clubs, whether it's music venues, whether it's hotels, whether it's your neighbourhoods, that there must be places where women can feel, girls can feel, that if they feel vulnerable, threatened, that they can go to. And that strategic vision is being developed by UN Women UK, who, by the way, are one of the lead trusted organisations in the UN family. And we're proud of that, because that means people in this country are doing a lot of things that are right. But they can't be done by themselves. And that's when it comes to the individual being part of the round, a part of the whole. Because somebody said to me, you know, it's easy to go into a place with a really angry face and look as if you are in control of the room. But a much nicer thing is to go into a room with a smile. And you'll find, actually, automatically, people attract back to you. Now, if politicians, and I'm one of them, hands up, if politicians just took a few of those lessons, our safer spaces would be created much more quickly. And instead of us constantly thinking how to berate each other, we actually see the good in each other. As Gandhi said, don't wait for somebody else to be the change. Be the change maker yourself. What stops you? And so our Safe Spaces program really is about letting us see how we can feel safe. I put my head above the parapet in public life. I take the consequences with it. Because I enjoy all the trimmings as well. So I need to take the consequences with it. And I came into politics because I didn't want another child growing up like me having to bear the scars that I have borne. And so it's a driver, and I'm pretty certain that there are many, many people in this room today who have borne the same scars.
And that's what this journey is about. It's a journey of healing as well.
Yeah.
Maureen, we'd like to move in a moment into our sort of shared meditation space.
Okay.
But before we do that, I wonder if you could just say a few words about extending this concept of creating safe spaces in the way that we're talking about. And just explore for a moment this idea of creating for ourselves a sacred space or a spiritual space. Because one is protecting yourself from what is out there, but another is drawing down power within yourself that makes you feel safe regardless of what is going on out there. How does that mechanism actually work?
When we talk about spirituality, what does it mean? Doesn't necessarily mean religion and all the external things that we associate with religion, but it's really about understanding that we have an identity that goes beyond gender and beyond ethnicity and everything else. And, you know, when I think about the world as my family, which I like to, it's this spiritual dimension that I'm really thinking about. And, you know, you can call it the human dimension, but the human dimension is the spiritual dimension. And when people tell their stories, really, of what has brought them to the point where they're at. I'm part of a forum called the Spirit of Humanity, and Baroness has been to one of our forums that takes place in Iceland every 2 years. But we don't ask people, and we have people of influence, leaders, ministers. We had the Prime Minister last time. And we don't ask people to speak about what they do, but about who they are and what motivates them. And when people tell their personal stories, you begin to realize that we all share the same trials and tribulations, is one thing, the same fears, but we also have the same qualities within that, if we nurture them, can really become a force for good in the world. We have this saying that your attitude creates the atmosphere. And so if I have the attitude that somebody's different, that's the atmosphere that I'll create. But if I have the atmosphere that everybody belongs to me, then that's the atmosphere I'll create, and it makes a huge difference. And so it's coming to that point where I'm living from that spiritual space. Mm. And then that will create the safety that I'm seeking. And of course it takes a lot of strength to do that, and a lot of faith, because the challenges can make you doubt yourself and everything else. And then that's where you're talking about drawing power. Of course there's a source from which we can draw power that's bigger than us, that's unlimited. And that's very important, and whether it's through prayer, it's through meditation, or just through that reflection and contemplation, we really need to reach that point where we feel that we have a strength that's greater than us. And that is just so empowering. And it makes you feel that, well, there's a certainty that if I keep with this energy, things will be okay, things will work. And I'm not going to allow myself then to get into the limited identities, which is what creates the conflict. And so we do need to now come to a higher place, I feel. Not easy, but what else can we do now?
Where else can we go?
Where else can we go? The crises are too strong. We need to come to another level, and then really change can happen, which is why working with our leaders is so, so important. Really important. So
fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you. Before we do our meditation, I don't know if we have our roving mics available, but is there anyone that would like to just put a question to our panelists? It could be picking up on something that has been said, or you may have a point of your own that you would like to feed into our thoughts this afternoon. Did someone raise their hand here? No? Scratching your nose? Yeah? We've got a couple here, just in the middle. We could have a microphone. Thank you.
Om Shanti. What are the views of the panel on the subject of Alzheimer's disease in Asian women?
So what?
Alzheimer's disease in Asian women.
Yeah.
Gosh, okay. Anyone specialist subject, Alzheimer's disease?
So if I run, well, I have, one of my businesses is adult social care.
Okay.
And in that, we do get and it's an increasing number of men and women with dementia and Alzheimer's. And I think part of it is the lack of community that we've got. Because isolation, having to spend hours by yourself day in, day out, not being able to access services. And that's why I keep coming to the point that if you can't access something, you can't know about it, you don't get the help. So I will fight that battle, and I will continue to fight it until I know every single man, woman in this city is able to access, because we don't want loneliness to be the main cause of dementia and then Alzheimer's, and then not have the services to support it. It's just inhuman in one of the wealthiest countries on the planet.
Is it a particular problem in the Asian community?
I think the problem we have is that as families have got better educated and the children have moved away, adults don't want to leave where they feel safe. They've got their networks, but as you become older, sadly, networks die away too. And then you're left on your own, and we see it day in, day out, that people are on their own every single day for hours on end with no human interaction. And therefore, part of our coming together should be, how do we look after our neighbour?
There's a lovely advert on the television about having a cup of tea with a neighbour, which I think is really inspired.
Yeah.
You know, they're
Yeah.
promoting their product,
Yeah.
but they're promoting the concept of
Yeah.
reaching out to your neighbours as well, and that's lovely.
Could
Thank
I
you for
just
the question.
say
Yeah.
something, because in London anyway, and I know other places, we have some sisters who go to day centres and do meditation and, you know, some activity with people who have dementia and so on. And then one of them was asked about the instance of dementia in our community. And we talked about it, and we actually realised it's quite low. And I think that's because, as you say, definitely a sense of community where people come together, sometimes every day, sometimes a few times a week. But also the fact that people have been practicing meditation and using their minds in a different way. I think this has had a big impact.
So there you go. Remember
Yeah.
where you heard it first.
Yeah.
Meditation, good prevention.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed for your question. Was there another question there as well? Yeah.
If you stand up, we might
I
be
think
able
we can
to.
hear you. Yeah.
So you mentioned that the Labour Party had to bring in a policy change to propel women forward, to bring that change on the total party level. But so you mentioned that the Labour Party had to bring a policy change to actually propel women forward. And I think it was last year or the year before, businesses were they had to kind of submit their gender pay gap because they were forced to by government. So what's being done at a central level to help propel women forward? Because you yourself said, if we carry on at the trajectory that we are, it's going to take 250 years for us to see some equality. So they won't be able to, we won't see equality until there's some intervention done at a central government level.
It is a reasonable question, given that we know the problem, and it should be so easy to fix. What's holding it up? It's a good question.
So the great thing is that the major companies need to report it. Personally, I think everybody should report it. I think everybody should not be frightened, and if you're being honest, an employer, and paying the right pay, why not show it? I mean, my colleague and friend Ruby McGregor-Smith has done one on race, which we're waiting for publication of, because yet again, it's not just gender, it's also race. There are huge gaps, and we need to call those companies out that take advantage of both gender and race. I don't see a problem if you're doing something right, why hide it?
I mean, as I said earlier, it ought to be the legacy of the Equal Pay Act, which came into force 50 years ago. That ought to be the legacy, that we move on from just the big companies to all companies. Now, the difficulty is that the small businesses, small to medium-sized companies, will say that they don't have the resources to be able to do this. But of course, it's really necessary in a city like Leicester, where we have so many small to medium-sized enterprises, to do that Equal Pay Act and to basically have that intervention. Change is not going to happen if we wait for change. We do have to enable change and intervene for change to happen. And I think that that's why we, the Labour Party can now say today in 2019 that we now have parity in terms of the number of male MPs compared to the number of female MPs. But we do need, as shown, we do need everybody to do the same thing, and then we would have parity in Parliament as a whole, not just 1/3 of MPs who are female. So we've got to, intervention is the only way to bring about change. In America, obviously they call it affirmative action in America, which is illegal here, but at the same time, we do need the intervention to bring about, because we can't wait 200 and however many years for our children and their children to feel the benefits.
But the public sector can do it today. The public sector has enough employees for them to be held to answer why they're not doing it. And I think that's important. The universities should do it today. All those institutions.
I think they are certainly in Leicester. They're doing it, and and local authorities are doing it.
But the local authorities have also recognised the gaps. So if there is a gap, let's fill it. I mean, why should we accept, Claudia, that there should be nearly an 11% gap between black and white? Why should we accept that? That's the thing. And I think your question is right, but let's do it collectively. This isn't about party politics. This is about us coming together and saying it's not good enough. It's not good enough for you, it's not good enough for me.
Well, if I put down an EDM in Parliament, early day motion, hopefully you'll support it.
Well, because in the Lords, the problem is, this is where the Commons think that they can beat us, but we then come back on them with the detail.
You all need to just work together now.
We don't do EDMs. In the Lords, we don't do EDMs. That's the only problem.
But maybe that's the legacy of women coming into Parliament, is that they can say to Parliament, look, we're not going along with those rules anymore.
Exactly.
We're just all working together,
Yeah.
no matter where we come from, no matter which part of Parliament we work for. We're going to tackle this together.
Well, I have to say, we got a circular or a letter just a few days ago about this equal pay, and if we have more than 250 employees, we have to declare. I think it was 250. But I mean, 250 is quite a lot.
Yeah.
Actually, we're all volunteers, so our pay is very equal. But I was just surprised that it was that number, which it would be a fair-sized company if it
250
was.
employees.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we know that actually, in terms of economies, we're a global. We have to take a global outlook, but we know that the more unequal a society is, the greater the disparity. Yeah. We know that in countries where there is greater equality, where it's closer, that these issues aren't so great. And that's where we have to tackle these differences. So if we can bring society to a more equal society, then these issues wouldn't be so prevalent.
Well, there you go. The Brahma Kumaris are definitely blazing a trail here with equal pay. Just don't get any pay at all. But there is a serious point behind that, which is that everyone in the Brahma Kumaris is working on a gifting economy, which is we all give what we can and we do what we can, and the whole benefits.
Exactly.
And we don't expect to take necessarily back to the value of what we've given.
Yeah.
It's just give what you can.
But I was going to say something. In terms of the Scandinavian countries, before the war they were very poor, they were at the bottom of the rung. And then after the war, they've come up, in the situation we see them today. And there was somebody at the Spirit of Humanity Forum last time who spoke about the Nordic secret as to why this happened for the Nordic countries. And what they did was that they offered young people, when they came out of university, the opportunity to spend several months in retreat in nature. And because,
university.
and because of that, and the whatever change that brought, change of perspective, it created the kind of societies that they have today,
Wow.
which are much more equal
Yes.
than many societies around the world.
Well, that's a
So that was
beautiful
very
note to end on.
interesting.
Really beautiful. And maybe the Global Retreat Centre in Oxford could put itself forward as being a venue for postgraduate connection with nature. How about
no
that?
problem.
I want to move us on because I'm desperate to
Yes.
get Joe up on the stage. Joe, is your pay equal to men doing the same job as
It
you?
is 100%.
100%?
Fantastic.
And time served. But obviously, if you take time out for childcare, then you're on a pause. But
Right.
if you say there is no, it is one pay, group captain, X years service equals
It's the
one.
same. Excellent. Well, we're going to be hearing more about the RAF in just a moment. But before we do, let's just... Usha's saying something. Sadly, we are all of us operating in a very imperfect world, and we're all trying to change that. And maybe the best way to change that is through bringing our awareness in our meditation and our vibrations and our energy, and use the level of our creative thinking to change the atmosphere and thereby change something out there in the world. But thank you for your question. So we're going to just take a few moments now to conclude this part of our afternoon with a little meditation, just to digest some of the many wonderful points that we have heard. And Sister Maureen is just going to speak a few thoughts for us as we just have a few moments of meditation to close.
Thank you. Just take a few moments. Sit comfortably, feet on the floor. Take a deep breath. We're relaxing the body and the mind. And we take that inner journey. A journey of thoughts to touch our real selves. We have many identities, but we also have something greater than all of that. Instead of being split up into many pieces, through my real identity, let me become whole again. It's the inner identity of the self, the being. The being that thinks and feels, has memories, consciousness. When I go beneath the surface and dive deep, I find the core of my being. And at the core of my being is peace, is love, is wisdom. This is the inner goodness that I share with every other being on the planet. Let me nurture that inner goodness. Let me bring that inner peace consciously into my life. Let me think and act from a place of love. and let wisdom guide me in every decision I make. Remembering that I can draw strength from the one above who is unlimited, a constant source of love and strength. As I nurture myself, I begin to change, and I begin to see change happen around me. And I have the pure thought for this change to spread into my community and in the whole world. Thank you. Om Shanti.
Sometimes it really does feel that we can say more with silence than we ever can with words. It takes us into a very powerful part of ourselves. Thank you very much, Sister Maureen Goodman. And of course, thanks to our other panellists as well, Baroness Verma and Claudia Webb, for sharing very much from the heart and giving us some amazing insight into their experience of their world of work here on this International Women's Day. It's been really inspirational. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for allowing me to spend my birthday.
Well,
Yes, and your
really
happy
privileged.
birthday.
Yeah.
Oh, every year your birthday will be on International Women's Day.
And I think there is birthday cake for everyone later. Am I right in saying that? Is there? Or refreshments later, yeah.
Thank you.
We'll call it birthday cake. There you go.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Please take your seats again. And whilst we're just
Do we need to
rearranging
give our-
the chairs, I'd like to just invite Sister Usha to just join us on the stage for a few moments. And Usha is going to share with us a poem.
Shanti, can I ask all of you just do me a favour? Just do this.
Ah.
Does everyone know what that is? What it means? Anyone wants to have a go? Each for equal. I'm a big believer in equality because it plays a big part in my life. Because we are all equal at the end of the day, aren't we? Yeah? Okay. I just want to quickly read out a short poem that's actually been written especially for today, not by myself to be honest. It's actually been written by one of the brothers from the Brahma Kumaris. His name is Bhavish, so I want to say thank you very much for Bhavish. But I'm going to read it even though the title of this poem is called The Two Worlds. First, equality, a world beyond sound, where each light lovingly pounds, radiates in an ocean of love. Simple, straight, subtle, incognito. The quality of equality is tranquility. Varieties, the physical world bound by time, like turning a page. A difference is created by being encased. When the shoelace of the body is too tight, infection of injustice are seen. From respect so fair, now we stop and stare. Separation creates superiority, but also the reverse, inferiority. When fused in these ego views, one becomes confused. Equality, while in variety, to take back our strength by observing one tendency at length. Then we are able to serve, bring about natural self-respect, curve beyond and above the highs and lows of blade. Let the ego fade. Make the time for the world of equality simply dart. Enable you to enjoy every part. This is a true art to become spiritually smart. Om Shanti. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. What was that phrase? Equality whilst in, was it diversity?
Equality.
Equality. It was
Equality while in variety.
equality while in variety. Isn't that lovely? Equality while in variety. That's
Thank you
really
very
great.
much, everyone.
Beautiful.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Isha.
Thank you.
Beautiful. So we thought it would be nice to have a little profile interview with our next guest, who is Captain Jo Lincoln. And whilst she's just coming on the stage, let me just tell you, because she's very modest about this. Is she here yet? She's behind me. She said, I don't really want to talk about myself, but while she's just coming on the stage, let me just celebrate her achievements, because it is a massive deal. Jo was made station commander at RAF Wittering in August of last year. One of only literally 3 or 4 women who have reached this level in her chosen profession. It's a huge achievement, and Jo's so humble with it, but really, we're so proud of your achievements, Jo. Are they bringing you a chair, or you?
I was going to kind of walk around and stuff.
Okay,
Is that going to
that's
be
actually
okay?
good.
Is that going to mess it
No,
up?
that's fine. Let me just finish your introduction. You joined the Royal Air Force in 1977, is that right?
Hopefully 97. I was born in 76.
In 97? Oh, no, it does say 97 here, that was just me.
Giving away my age, I'm 43.
And RAF Wittering actually has got a very interesting history, but going back to both the First World War and the Second World War. It was from there that planes took off for the Battle of Britain.
Absolutely.
And it was also involved in the Blitz. And you yourself have served in operations in Sierra Leone, in Kosovo, in Afghanistan and Iraq. So, you know, you're no stranger to putting yourself in danger's way. And yet you have really, with your colleagues, some of whom are with you here today, been exploring this idea of creating a sense of personal safety. And you are so well qualified to talk about that. So thank you so much for sharing your insights on this.
No worries at all. Can we just play the video, please, quickly? I'm just going to show you a bit about what my ladies do.
Being a woman in the Royal Air Force is such a good opportunity. It's exciting, it's challenging, it's really rewarding. It's something that I would recommend to everybody.
International Women's Day is an important date in our RAF calendar as it celebrates the equality between women and men as a whole force, as people and not gender.
Since I joined the MOD 23 years ago, I think it was quite unheard of to have females in senior leadership roles, and now, today, you can look anywhere and see women in high-ranking jobs, which is brilliant to see.
International Women's Day means to me about celebrating all of women in defence and about coming together and being each for equal.
Am I allowed to move around, or is that going to happen all the time? And that's just a picture, a collage of some of the women that I command. But I think it's important also to say that I just don't command women. I command 2,800 men and women, and I'm incredibly proud to be a Royal Air Force officer And I don't just command service personnel, I have contractors that support us and civil servants as well. So I think it's really important that we heard Lucy say there, it's about the whole force. And for me it's one team to one effect, and that's really important. I do command RAF Wittering, that is one of my very important roles, but also what I do is I'm a thing called the A4 Force Element Commander, and that probably sounds, what on earth is that? That is basically, we have a team of incredible engineers and logistics professionals that are a moment's notice to go on operations anywhere around the world. They're not just based at RAF Wittering, they are based at 14 locations across the United Kingdom, and today, whilst we're here, I have 300 of them serving on operations globally, and to them I think about them every day because I have a duty of care to look after them wherever they are in the world, and I'm very privileged to command them. So if we can just move on to the next slide. I know you're not all going to be able to see the detail, and this is an experiment for me because you probably thought that you would stand here, see someone in a military uniform, and they would talk about leadership in a very specific way. And I kind of looked at the sacred space, and actually it's something myself and my incredible team have been working on since I took command 6 months ago. And I don't think 22 years ago when I joined the Royal Air Force that I would have been brave enough to stop and think about doing leadership in a different way. I was in a uniformed service who was commanding on operations, and it was really important that we just was very task focused. However, I think as you get more responsibility and you really step back and start thinking, but you also know yourself a bit more. And there in the top left corner, and I know values to this community is really important. I had to sit down when I took over this command and think, what are my personal values? And for me, you'll see in the top left, I've picked out trust, inspire, care, which is really important to me personally, and power. And then conveniently through that word, it creates the word team. Because I couldn't do what I do as a commander without my whole team. So then you say, well, how do I get the best out of that team? Because you can't create anything without a team. So how do you get the best out of those people? And we don't want stereotypes, and we don't want robots. And diversity and inclusion for the defence, particularly the Royal Air Force, has really moved on recently, and I'm really proud about that. There's been all sorts of reports that have come out, and I'm not saying we're perfect, but if I look at the organisation I joined 22 years ago, I wouldn't have seen a group captain, female station commander 22 years ago. Philip has been very kind in what she said, but I am not the senior female military officer. I am not. We have a 3-star in the Royal Air Force, Air Marshal Sue Gray. The Air Force, I'm very proud, are leading the way. However, there has only been probably 4 or 5 women that have commanded in a Royal Air Force station, of which there's 14, and that's over 101 years. So yeah, I am quite proud. But you know what, I'm quite proud of the other women that have gone before me who have opened the door to allow me to do what I do. And the service I joined, I couldn't have joined the RAF regiment and gone onto the front line. Now every single job with equal pay is open to women. So you could be in the Royal Air Force regiment, you now can be in the infantry and the army. You couldn't do that in the service I joined. So that just shows you how much we've moved on. And I was talking to my team, I know we're here talking about gender today, but even you couldn't be 20 years ago openly lesbian or gay in the military either. And that's an important journey that we've really taken recently. So I looked at it and I said, so how, we're talking about safe space today. So how do I allow everyone that's in my team, I don't know whether it's a protected characteristic or they just think differently. How do they all feel that they can come to work and truly be themselves? How do you create an environment in the workplace where someone can be brave enough to put their hand up, and that might be my most junior civil servant or my most junior airman or woman, and challenge me, the group captain? But you know what? They might have the greatest idea in the room. Normally the person that's really quiet in the room is probably sat there and has got the idea I really want to solve a really wicked problem. So how do you create that safe space? Also being safe to fail. I have done a lot of operations serving overseas, and believe me, it's not always the environment where you can test new ideas and it's safe to fail, because you know what, that could be someone's life. But when we're back in the UK and we're doing things differently, fail can also mean first attempt in learning. So how do you as a boss make sure that you create the space for your people to take that leap of faith, to trust that you won't then turn around when they may fail and really chew them out? Because I think of 22 years ago, I probably have worked for bosses that I wouldn't have felt safe taking that risk, feeling safe to fail. And when something had gone wrong, I would have dreaded telling the boss. So how do you create the environment then as a leader when things go wrong that they trust you enough to tell you? But also, how do you trust them enough to give them the opportunity to even jump off that cliff, jump forward to whatever they want?
If I look at some of the other things, it's okay not to be okay. Today we haven't really untapped the mental well-being, but this place really helps personnel that might have mental health challenges. And I work in an organisation, and you'll all have heard of post-traumatic stress, but actually you don't necessarily need to go overseas on operations to actually have stress in your life and have a difficult mental well-being challenge. And certainly, again, 22 years ago, if I wasn't feeling mentally well, would I have felt, particularly being a female officer, brave enough to tell my boss that actually I wasn't okay? Because I don't think we had the context and the ability to have those really difficult conversations, because you had to be really brave to do that. So for me, I want people to walk in and catch them early and say, boss, you know what, having seen that road traffic collision, it could just be on the A1. You know what, I feel a bit weird about that, and I don't think I've quite dealt with it. So how do you make sure? Also feeling valued. I think you only give your true best to an organisation, whatever it might be, if you really think that your contribution, your hard work is being valued, and also that you have a voice and someone is actually listening. I know the Baroness mentioned it earlier, but listening's quite hard. And I know as a leader it's an area I have to work on personally, because sometimes you know the answer, but actually you've got to stop because you might not have the best answer. So again, how do you stop and have a look at that? And then, so the organisation I want to create, and again, this isn't Joe Lincoln's Royal Air Force, and if you look up RAF leadership, you are definitely not going to see this model in there. This is my personal model, and I'm working with my team at the moment, and I wouldn't even say in 2 weeks' time, 4 weeks' time, 6 weeks' time, 8 weeks' time, that this model will still be the model that I have. There is something in it that I think is really important to me, which is creating the environment, the safe space where my guys and girls can come into work every day and give their best. And when they get it wrong, they know that you'll support them. And you know that they can take that jump of faith and they can be really brave in a room of 500 people and put their hand up and say, boss, have you thought about this? But there's also then when we go forward, so I'm trying to give them that really big box to operate in. But then I might go forward in operations and then need to understand that the operational context has changed, that we are going to have to be a bit task orientated. And their box has just gone from being like that, and their box might become quite small because I just need them to operate in a certain way to keep themselves safe. So that probably gives you a bit of from a Royal Air Force officer, you heard a Group Captain Joe Lincoln was coming to speak to you today. I'm not sure quite what you were expecting. I don't think 22 years ago, male or female station commander, you would necessarily have the same lens, and I don't say in another 20 years you would have the same lens. But what I want to create is an organisation that is truly diverse in not just the protected characteristics of gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, but you have the environment where you can think differently. I always felt I've been in 22 years, for the first 15 years of my career, I felt like I was conforming. I've got more senior, I've got more experience, and I've got more age on my side and life experience. For the last 7 years, I've been brave enough to be horribly me. And now this is why I'm brave enough to come in here today in front of you all to say this is my idea on how I'm going to lead going forward. Whatever a job might do in the future, I'll try and take it with me. But this isn't just about the commander or the leader, it's about the team within which you command. And they have to be with me on this journey, believe in it, to do it, and then see if it works. And who knows, in a year's time I might reflect, we might have got it wrong, or there might be something in it. So it's not quite the sacred space, but what I'm trying to talk about today is the organisation and creating a safe space in which my people can reach their best. And we heard about flourishing talent. Allow talent to flourish, whatever rank, whatever gender, whatever ethnicity. So I think what I'd like to do is just almost set the framework for you. Either Philippa, I'm sure, will ask me a question, or I'm happy to take any questions from the audience at all.
Before you sit down, Jo, could you just talk us through these little jigsaw pieces and what they say?
Okay, so absolutely. So I've talked about the benefits of a safe space, and then it's got safe to fail, feel supported, it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to be different. Be and feel valued, and bring your ideas. And what I hope that creates is a increased feeling safe, feeling more empowered, feeling more included, feeling that you can innovate more. Hopefully, you'll even probably perform greater, so there is an economic benefit potentially to this. And also you'll feel more secure. And what does that do? That hopefully brings a more inclusive and effective organisation, and it allows me, the commander, to deliver through my people. And in a more divergent thinking organisation, I'm hoping that all of my people think that they can bring their whole self to work. And apologies, I laddered after the very energetic yo dance, which I think I will be bringing into my command group, which will really scare my troops in the future. I love the scarves, that's it, we're having some.
Synchronised scarf twirling, there you go.
Absolutely. I kept my shoes on the stage, although I was tempted to leave them off.
So I'm interested to ask you, Jo, what was the process by which you came up with this? Was that a collaborative and, dare I say it, possibly feminine approach that you took in doing that?
So we were talking earlier, I command men and women in my command group at the moment. If I look at my station, it's unusual that actually 60% of my command group for my station is actually women. But if I look at my force, I'm probably more into the 20-30%. So I came in and I had a draft set of values, because I think values need to be your own values, because you have to believe in them. And for me, one of the values that I had different to my predecessor was trust was really important to me. So it's really difficult, isn't it? You only come into a job for 2 years, and you have to be really careful that you don't want to change the organisation like that, because we come and go as the leader in the military. So you've got to be careful that, as I said at my interview with the chief when I was applying for the role, you're the gatekeeper to that role. It's not about your 2 years. You have the privilege to look after that organisation for 2 years, and you hope that you will leave the organisation in a better place than the one that you took over. But it's not about the commander and what they can achieve in their 2 years. And I think we've really struggled that in the military, because people come in and go, I'm going to achieve this in my 2 years. Whereas actually some of the things I'm talking about here would take 5-10 years behaviour and culturally to really take effect, because you're kind of steering an ocean tanker rather than you're on a speedy car and you can quickly turn right. So I would say for me, the values piece, but I tested and adjusted it. So after 2 weeks of taking command, I took my execs away for a couple of days, and we had a think tank, and that's where I exposed my values for the first time, and we tested them. The discussion we had on colours, believe me, what was really interesting, the first version had team in red. And for those that aren't in the military, feeling red teamed means consistently feeling challenged. So you've got an idea and someone's challenging your idea. So even the colour of team was really important to my warrant officer cadre when I went and tested it with them. They didn't want red in the word team. So it sounds really simple, but that means hopefully that my people understand how we got there and had a say in what colours. Then this middle bit, I had 5 months in the organisation, and my team correct me, and particularly Liz at any point if I get this wrong, but we had the luxury of 3 weeks of having a consultant come in and look at empowerment, about how empowered my organisation was or wasn't. And that's really good as a commander, because you've got someone independent, do questionnaires, focus groups, and just comes in and asks, how is it? Is it really how you think it is, or is it something different? Out of that, I already had an idea of the type of organisation that I think we need to move on. And I think for me, my life experience and potentially my gender, but I can't guarantee it, had an impact in the way possibly I was looking at how I was going to command and lead. So I would say I knew there was something about, because we're very safety focused and security focused, as you can imagine, about how do you create the environment within which people can put their hand up and challenge. And that's how this journey started for me. And I would say then we looked about all the other things we're trying to do, like a more inclusive organisation, a more empowered organisation. And I would say at the moment that is in very draft. I was even discussing leadership yesterday with my reservists, and I didn't believe this was mature enough to talk to them about, because they're very junior personnel, and I don't want them thinking, if I go and apply all of this, I'm going to get promoted. Because this isn't you do X, Y, and Z equals promotion. This is almost like doctrine. It's a handrail of things that I think are important and how to role model. And I want to role model this, and let's see if it works. So I would say it's a mix of both.
So quite a co-creative approach, really,
yeah.
Which you could say is a feminine approach. What for you is the benefit of being in command of a workforce who are bringing their whole person to work, rather than just the part of themselves that fits in to what the goal is that you're trying to achieve?
You can't get complete diversity of thought. I was just talking to one of my team earlier. if you don't feel you could come in. You know, prime example, yo dance. You know, who would have thought that the three of us were going to take our jackets off, get going, take our shoes off and start throwing around scarves? Would we have been brave enough to do that here 20 years ago? Would we be brave enough to do it back in the station? And you'll always be looking up and go, what's the boss going to do? And if the boss is going to do it, then you might give it a bit of a go. So I'm not sure. I think it's about taking a leap of faith. I think I felt like an outlier, if I'm being honest, to start with. So I spent, 15 years. I wore trousers and a shirt. I had short hair. I didn't want to look feminine. I just wanted to fit into the crowd. I went to the interview for this job with a black skirt suit with a pink handbag, and I walked in to say hello to the chief with the pink handbag, and that was really important to me. So you know what? It's small wins, isn't it?
What did that represent, do you think?
That represented, it was Radley, so I like it. No, genuinely, it represented for me, the old me wouldn't have done that. The old me would have left the pink handbag. I probably wouldn't have even taken it. I would have taken a black rucksack. I would have worn a trouser suit. And I would have thought, what is the commander they want? And I've been very lucky. I've had an executive coach for the last 6 months. And I'd polished, you do a 2-minute pitch, and I'd polished it to death. And he went, where's Joe gone? You just said this is your dream job. Why don't you this is about as much as them wanting you as you wanting them. And why don't you actually say what you've just said to me? But he gave me, even though I'm 22 years in and a Greek captain, the confidence to go, well, you know what? Let's just be me, jump off the edge, as I would say to my team, and see if it works. And it did, and I'm lucky, and I'm now commanding RAF Witchery.
So, in your experience, by being yourself, you were able to give the best of yourself. And
yeah.
That is the point.
And it is, and I think it's... my team are incredible. I have some incredible men and women, and I think it's going to take a long time for them to trust me that genuinely I mean this. Because it depends, and we have lots of conversations about, will the next leader, boss, be like you and encourage this? Or will we feel we need to conform? And I can't make any guarantees. So I had a big discussion with my 2-up, we call them, so that's not my one boss, but the boss above that, so quite senior. And he said, but if you don't start making this change, Joe, then no one's going to start making this change. And there's something in it. So what have you got to lose? And my men and women are really intelligent, and they'll know if the context changes, and they know when they go forward on operations that the context might change. So what you can't do is hold back change. And if you think it's right, sometimes you've got to take a leap of faith. And as I said to you earlier, I'm not sure I've got this 100% right. There's something in it, I'm hoping I'm 68% right. But if I can create an environment where people will challenge, they'll bring their better ideas, they will feel comfortable being different, and then they role model that behaviour to their people. It's almost like a movement in itself. Because actually that might become the norm for the organisation, and then the boss that doesn't encourage it might be the boss that stands out.
It's a very good working example of how by bringing up the women within the organisation, the whole organisation gets to benefit, rather than just the women themselves.
But I think we've got to be really careful, and I think each different commander, and particularly I guess because I'm in the military, might look differently. We've got to be really careful that we're still evolving and we're still on a journey. And I have a lot of male peers that have worked exceptionally hard also to get where they are. And so I think for me it's about the best person for the job, and I mean this genuinely. And it's going to take us time to build an organisation, because it took me 22 years where I am. When I joined, women were only just able to be pilots, and the Air Force historically has been run by pilots. I'm a logistician. So therefore, to get to those top appointments, it's not actually about gender, it's about the experiences and the jobs that have been open to you. Now that all jobs are open to women and men joining the Royal Air Force, it's going to take us time for those to come through and to get to the percentages. What I wouldn't want to see is that my male peer, who is the best candidate, I would never want to be given the job. If there was a better candidate for the job, I think it's the best person for the job. And I'm hoping we're getting to a platform and a springboard where more women will be ready to compete and are the best person for the job. And that's just my vision of looking through it. I would never want to see positive action or positive discrimination. I just want the best people, regardless of gender, ethnicity, to get the right jobs.
So you would never want to see women-only lists?
No.
No. But it's great that you've got a woman engineer with you here today. So women are really working at all levels. of the RAF.
Yeah, absolutely.
spectrum.
And the top of the non-commissioned cadre, you know, and I am going to say this, Emma, you know, Warrant Officer Emma Hansen, she couldn't stand up and dance because actually her foot's in cast, but how committed is she today that she's come here on her crutches to be with us. But she was a real trailblazer. You've been in 35 years. You know, if you think of the Royal Air Force, I've talked about the last 22 years. What Emma has gone through to be a female engineer, to get where she is, to keep answering the phone and say, can I speak to the engineer? You're speaking to the engineer. No, you're a female. You can't be the engineer. I want to speak to the engineer. And that wasn't that they were bad people. The organisation wasn't ready. So it's people like Emma, it's people like Air Marshal Sue Gray that have gone through as engineers before us who have literally kind of paved the way to make it easier for me. What I want to do is mentor and coach the women that are just entering now. I never had a female mentor or role model because there weren't senior women ahead of me. So it's how we nurture and support that talent so they are confident to be themselves all the way through. And then, you know what, reach for the stars, per ardua ad astra, through adversity to the stars.
That's lovely. What was that?
Per ardua ad astra.
What language is that?
That is Latin, and
That's
it is the
Latin?
motto of the Royal Air Force. Through adversity to the stars.
Wow, that's nice. So part of your work, I mean, I could literally talk to you for the next
I know,
5
and I'm
hours,
aware you've
and
got
I'm aware
drinks
you've
and
got-
we're running late.
But part of
Oh,
your
there's a
work isn't
question.
just commanding your force, but also communicating what you do to the general public, which is part of why you're here today. And very often the public perception of what you do is they associate it with war and fighting and fighting national boundaries and quite sort of masculine ideas. What would you say if you had a couple of minutes to reposition the RAF in the context of some of the themes that we've been talking about today, which is being aware of the bigger picture?
I think it's really difficult because at the end of the day, the armed forces wouldn't exist unless we are there as an insurance policy for the United Kingdom to retain peace. So I think what we have to be careful of is there is a time where we may need to turn to, and whatever the government of the day needs us to do, we need to go and do. For me, though, that doesn't mean to say that we've always got to operate the way we've operated before. And you can have a really healthy way of approaching that and a really open-minded way of approaching that. So for me, you know, some of my best moments on operations, don't forget it's just not kinetic operations that we go out the door, we do disaster relief. And for those that remember Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, I went out there as the Chief of Staff, and that was probably one of the most rewarding operations. And I was second in command of that operation across defence, where we were able to go and help people at their moment of need. And now we're seeing things change environmentally, etc., in the United Kingdom. So we're doing military assistance to the civic authority. And what you would see is the person that needs to go and do the kinetic operations, and I think this is where...
By kinetic, what do you mean, sorry?
I mean where you might need to actually defend yourself and therefore have to shoot someone else to defend yourself. And that is, at the end of the day, that could be what we are asking our people to do. However, I think it's really important that you can't send out, 1 minute I'm asking someone to go and do that. The next minute, I could be asking them then to go into the Philippines with vulnerable people who have had literally their livelihood taken away and probably a lot of their family from them. I then need them to approach that in a totally different way than they would do on the streets of, say, Afghanistan, for example, where they feel in fear of their own life, and that's that safety angle, and where they can help others. So I think the organisation, because if you look at the multiple things that the Royal Air Force and the other armed forces are used for, it's no longer just think back to World War I and World War II. We are being used for so many different things. And therefore, the way we lead and command, the context is always going to change about how I need to employ those people. And so they need the agility, so they need to understand we don't just need that. I need you to be able to do this and this. And for me, when we're back in particularly the UK and we're reconstituting and looking at how we can move our incredible organisation forward, this is what I want to try and unlock. But they also need to understand when I need the other person, then we do have to turn to and do what we're also employed for.
So impossible for them not to be operating from their whole person?
Yes.
Because any part of them could be called on at any moment.
Absolutely, and we ask them to be away from their families for a long time in dangerous places. And so if you can't say it's okay not to be okay and tell someone that's really bad, wherever you are, whether you're back here or forward. So we've got to create the environment, even when we're forward, where someone can say, boss, you know what, I don't think I can go out the door again. And that's really, really important, that they don't then go out the door and they go to a place where we can't get them back.
Sitting here today, I'm wondering whether, at the question I asked the others, there was a moment when you decided, or you realised even, that you had the potential to be a change maker. And what do you think it was that stirred in your heart at that moment? What was that change that you wanted to bring about?
It's make a difference, and that's probably the bit that's moving over there. So everything that I see annoys me, and I think we've been talking about whether you fight or you campaign, etc. So for me, it's about making a better organisation. What you want to do is, you know, rather than see something that upsets you or that you don't like, then why not try and make a difference? But obviously you've got to get to certain points in the organisation. What I want to do is make sure that everyone can make a difference all the way through. But I certainly felt that I had to get to a certain level where I felt I could really start now making a difference. And I'm very privileged because I sit on the Diversity and Inclusion Steering Group for the Royal Air Force. And I don't actually represent gender because I don't want to in this role, because I command. I happen to be a woman, which is role modelling in itself. And I actually am very passionate, as you've heard me talk about mental well-being. So I'm actually the disability advocate for the Royal Air Force.
Will you allow us to journey with you on this journey that you're doing? Because it would be lovely to see where this ends up. It feels very exciting. It feels full of huge potential. And it's a privilege to be in at the beginning of it, don't you agree? And it would be lovely to follow.
All you can do is your best, can't you?
You can only do your best. But do please keep us informed, and we would love to have you back and share more of where this is going.
I know they're itching to go, but a lady keeps looking at me and I know she's got an itchy question.
Any itchy questions?
Yeah.
How is it going to, how are you getting prepared to, it takes a good leadership to...
I think it's about feeling safe. So the Ministry of Defence, as any other government department, is exceptionally well prepared to deal with this, because obviously we still have to be ready. So prudent planning, as you would expect, is going on to ensure that we can do our role when is required.
Can I just interrupt? Did everyone hear the question? It was about how do you show inspired leadership with the coronavirus and the whole situation that we're facing?
So I think a case, and it sounds a really tactical case this week, my guards check IDs. So as you go through every gate, you hand your ID to the guard and they check both sides. And this is why I want to work for an organisation that's happy to challenge. And one of those guards, we have a form that you fill in. If you feel unsafe or you feel something could be done better, you fill in what's called an inform. Sounds really simple. They filled it in and they said, boss, you know what? Why are we handling all these people's ID? Because we could be passing this on, or we could be putting ourselves at risk. So what we've done is change the procedure that the person presents the ID, both sides, and our personnel aren't trying to handle it. So I think for me, it's about keeping things in context. I think it's very easy at the moment for people to feel worried and have things, and it's making sure that they know the facts and they don't work on rumour, and that's important in everything we do. And the other thing is where you can make really small changes or even big changes to make your people feel safer, you listen to them and you make that change. Because that's an example I raised then at my next Monday command board, where I said, look, isn't that brilliant? That person felt unsafe. They raised that issue, and within 24 hours we changed the procedure.
So that's the power to bring about change, and it's the power of listening.
Yeah, and I've still got some more learning to do.
Yeah. So, Group Captain Joe Lincoln, MBE, I forgot to mention MBE. Thank you so much.
Mary. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. So, I think we're done. It says here meditation. I think that's just music that we're playing at the end. We've had our meditation, or are we going to just finish with a few moments of silence? That might be nice. It's been such a rich afternoon. Thank you all so much for giving up your time for this Sunday afternoon to come and be together as a community, as a group of women, as a group of men and women. These occasions are always enriching. There's always something we can take away from it, something that we can apply in our own daily lives, some inspiration that we can carry forward. And I hope you've all had plenty of inspiration to carry forward from this afternoon. So we're just going to close with a few moments, and then as you leave there will be refreshments as well. Thank you.
heart, you know the right way to go. And if you don't have the courage, ask for it. If you don't have the power, pray for it. 'Cause you're the palest green angel I've ever seen. And the whole world's protected by your wings. And though you cry, where your tears fall, flowers grow. Cut the rope and the mountain will fall. Hold on a while and you could save us all. And if you don't have the power, ask for it. And if you don't have the courage, scream for it. 'Cause you're the tallest green angel I've ever seen. And the whole world is wrapped inside your wings. And though you fall, where your bones break, love is born.
Thank you, Om Shanti. Goodbye. Bye-bye.